going on, everybody? It's your man Zoe Brown, and welcome back to the class, where we are a distinguished network of businessmen, entrepreneurs, and educators. Here on my left, we have Keenan Gray, who is a minister and educator, and here on my right, we have Dan Linglitz, who is an advertising professional. So today we're going to be talking about presentation, specifically your spoken presentation. Now, when you're speaking in front of an audience, what are some of the ways that you can really capture your audience's attention? You know, what's some strategies for really engaging with your audience and really connecting with that audience right from the very beginning? You know, you guys are professional men, you speak for a living. I'm sure as a professional you have to pitch to a lot of business people and you speak in front of groups and crowds. Right. So what are some ways that you really connect with your audience from the beginning? I know for me, usually if I start off with a story, that usually connects with them right away. Or if I even start off with a question, that gets people thinking, because now they feel like they're a part of the experience that I'm attempting to create. Right. So what about you?
Yeah, I think storytelling is important. I think you bring up a great point. So I think leading with a story and finding a way to relate to people before you deliver your presentation material is a good tactic.
Right.
So how can I sort of get on the same level as you?
Right.
So I become, as a presenter, more relatable to the audience. And a lot of times I think that that's storytelling. Storytelling is so prevalent in our culture these days, whether it's movies, whether that's, you know, how I want to represent myself,
right,
you know, my own story online, you know, books. But I think brands do it all the time. You know, brands have stories to tell, you know, heritage stories or whatever it might be. And I think as presenters, that's a good strategy. Lead with a story that somehow is going to segue into your presentation material and lays the foundation for connecting with your audience.
Once you know your audience, then you could design your presentation to get across to your audience. So it's about knowing who it is you're speaking to.
Yeah. So what happens if you don't do that research? If you fail to find out more information about who your audience is? Like, what are some of the things that can happen?
The worst thing that can happen is that you're looking at an audience who's blankly looking at you. You know, one thing about presenters is that we feed off the energy of our audience. And in order for us to be encouraged, we have to know that they're getting what it is we're offering.
Right.
If we don't do our research, we're not sure if they'll get the information that they're supposed to get.
That's a great point. I think the worst thing that happens is your message doesn't go through. Anytime we're presenting, we're trying to deliver a message. You have a point to make.
Right.
So if you're not finding that foundation, if you're not finding a way to relate, and if you're not doing your homework and knowing your audience, then your message is lost. And you have an audience who's just waiting for you to get through your material instead of soaking in your material.
Right.
So this is why I like to lead with a story that demonstrates that I get you as the audience. I find some common ground up front.
Common ground.
Yep, common ground is so key, right? Whether it's preaching to a congregation, you talked about presenting at work, we do it all the time. You know, you have to find that common, you know, connective tissue with the audience, and you do that by exercising empathy and I think getting to know them. Like, what are they here for? Why should they be listening to what I'm saying? It's not always about what I have to say. It's about, can I understand what their expectation is and what they want to hear?
Good point.
And then can I? Because it's not about me all the time.
They want
they want something. And finding that common ground is so key. If you don't find that common ground, you can have an adverse effect where you end up turning people off that in your audience, and you definitely don't want that. You know, you can say something that may include some people but excludes other people, and those some people that are connecting with you, that's fine for them, but what about the rest of the people who feel disconnected now? Because you said something that's disconnecting, that turns them off, and that's the worst thing. You don't want anybody to be turned off while you're talking, or, you know, walk out, which is like the worst thing. People don't like to be sold, but they like to buy. And you want them to buy into what you're saying.
So what you're saying is sometimes you have to come off script.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty much what you're saying. Which is true, I agree with.
Absolutely.
You know, because if you stay on script, then you're never going to get that audience back. So you have to be able to come off script. So you have to know your audience, you have to know your material. You have to know how to think without looking down at a piece of paper.
That's right. I like what you said about kind of going off the script and polling your audience,
Yeah.
a survey of who's in the audience and what do they want. So I go to colleges sometimes and I'm asked to speak on what it is that I do for a living.
Right.
And I don't want to just go in there and talk to a bunch of 21-year-olds who probably are a little bit skeptical of who's coming into the class, right? But at the same time, eager to hear something interesting from whoever's coming in to speak to them and make it relatable, and probably have a relatively short attention span.
Yeah.
So something that I like to do up front is just get to know the audience right away by saying like, hey, how many, I work in advertising, how many in here are interested in working in an ad agency?
Right.
Seeing how many hands go up. Okay, how many are going to pursue an MBA after this? Or are you going to get into economics, marketing, whatever? So that I can quickly assess the areas of interest in the room and then tweak my presentation on the fly so that I'm addressing them in a meaningful way.
Absolutely.
You said something about barrier.
Yeah.
And it really caused me to think, because some of the biggest barriers that we have are barriers that we create. So how do we feel when we're presenting? How do we come across? Because exactly how we come across is exactly how what our audience is going to perceive.
Right.
Overall, it's important to have a good spoken presentation, but remember what we talked about earlier, that image, it all has to be married together. You have to look well so that way you'll be able to be received well. You don't want people to be distracted by the way you look. You want people to get your message and you want to fulfill your purpose. This is the class. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure you come back next time. Peace.